be honest, I'm so nervous today, but what if I tell you a little story how I become a guest speaker in here because I found it really funny. So there's a person in charge from SVP contacted me and she said, Imes, come to the TEDx. So I thought that, okay, I will come because come on, it's TEDx. And I thought that I will become an audience. And then impulsively I say, yeah, let's go, sure. After that, when I come to the SVP, to the victory, then this person in charge suddenly sent me an invitation and also the proposal. And I was like, what is this about? And she said, Imes, you're going to be a guest speaker at TEDx. And I was like quite surprised. And because I already said impulsively said yes, then here I am. I become a guest speaker in here, so thank you for having me. But anyway, short introducing about myself. My name is Imes Paskalia, and I'm an artist. And today I'm going to talk about how my art saved me from my own madness. First, art as the closest self-approach for me. I know that every human have their own coping mechanism. Either it can be a bad thing, either it can be a good thing. But then I found that art is the one which have a good of my coping mechanism itself, so I can be sane and be functional again. And also I can think more into logic rather than only emotionally or feelings. There are three reasons why I can say that art as my closest self-approach. The first one is that having my honesty hour. So whenever I have my art practice in my studio, I feel like I can talk to my art, I can talk to the artwork itself because I realize that the artwork is like a dead object. So I feel like there's no one can judge me. So I can express it whether it's a good feelings, whether it's a bad feelings, the negative ones, etc. The second one is that being intimate and personal reflection and seek meaning behind a series of unexpected events. In here, I feel that it's more like an ongoing maturity process in my life. So I try to reflect it, I try to process it, and I'm trying to express it through my artworks. And I want to try to actually change this kind of bitterness past into something remarkable through my arts. The third one, reconcile from the scars and wounds. I believe that I have a symptoms of my harming behavior itself, so in my art, I mostly try to forgive and accept myself. I mostly try to accept who I am with trying to know more about myself. Who am I? This is a tricky question because as someone diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 2 and post-traumatic syndrome disorder, or we call it as PTSD, I have a peculiar thought on the way I approach my artwork. So I realized that most of the artists do sketches or drawings. For me, the illustration or the image that come into my brain or into my mind is actually a keywords. So from there, I try to interpret it, I try to illustrate it a little bit by bit, and then after that, I try to combine it, internal factors and the external factors, and then I try to put it into my artwork itself. And then, what have inspired me? I realized that this kind of mental and social issues are really happening in our world, in our global, locally, nationally, internationally. And as an artist, I want to be as someone who can speak louder than words could ever speak. So I realized that I want to put my own perspective from what I already experiencing into the artworks, and I want to show it to the world that these issues are really happening and real in our world. In late December 2019, I was being invited with Perspective Project and Clyde & Co., which they are actually, the Perspective Project is a small community of mental health who are tackling in mental health stigma based in UK, while on the Clyde & Co. is an international law firm they have this kind of focusing on working environment, and then they try to have a collaboration together so they could have a special focus on working environment on tackling mental health stigma. I was invited by them, so I sent them like 5 of my artworks, and then they chosen 3 of them, which are They Told Me to Bleed, White Noise, and Waterfall. A little bit story about 3 of these paintings is that They Told Me to Bleed talking about the harming behavior that I experiencing itself. So I realized that I know that this is a bad of my coping mechanism, and I try to put it into the artworks itself, but I also realized that harming behavior, it also leads to suicide. And if we are not aware of this kind of issues, most of people, young people or older people, will usually have this kind of tendency to suicide or end their life. So They Told Me to Bleed is talking about that matter. The second one is white noise. Because I'm having a psychosis symptoms or the psychosis behavior itself, where I can hear a negative voices or a bad voices inside my head. And most of them are telling me to end my life. They told me to harm myself and those kind of bad things. I tried to put it into one artwork again, and it led into the white noise of the artwork itself. The third one is waterfall. In bipolar disorder type 2, we have 2 episodes, the manic episodes and the low episodes. In manic episodes, most of the time you will usually feel euphoria, and the low episode you will feel depression itself. So in waterfall, I'm talking about the tricky part of having a happiness or a manic episode, and it's sometimes too much pain, and it's hard to bear itself. So usually what I do or what I did is usually just cry. But then the crying itself is a tricky one because it could become something that a happy tear, a sad tears. I want to talk a little bit about my family, who are my #1 support system. So I quoted from Langleaf. She's a novelist and a poet itself, from the book of Sea of Stranger. She says, "My father is a house, my mother is a home." I have 3 parts of my family: my mother, my father, and my big brother. My father is a wise man. He always gives me a lot of advices. Well, in Japanese, we call it as wejangan. And then he also kind of my go-to person whenever I'm feeling down or my mental condition going down again or go through the low episode itself. And then the second one is my mother. She's really warm, she's a lovable human being, we really talk like a best friend, we laugh, joke around. But one thing for sure that I admire her is that she's really strong, no matter how hard the situation is, or even are. And then the third one is my big brother. Me and my big brother have really a different path because he's a scientist and I'm an artist, but somehow I'm quite surprised on how he can usually handle me in a bad condition of my low episode, and he really understands on my mental condition itself. So, excuse me. So after that, it fascinates me on how actually my family become one of my strong support system. And believe me, in family, there's no leaving or all of that. Because I feel that my family always stick to one, and they support me no matter how bad my mental condition are. So in 2021, I had this residency program in Yogyakarta. So I painted about my family portrait. It's called Pelipur Lara. And this is the painting that I did for my family. In this painting, there are words actually. So there are 4 forms, and each of the forms have their own words. The first one is about my father, and I wrote, he said, I love you. And the second form, she said, I love you. It meant for my mother. And then the fourth one is actually for my brother. He said, I love you. But then, in the middle part is actually my part, which is I said, I'm sorry. And this is a real conversation that I had with my mother's fathers and brothers, where my mother said, every time she's in pain, I'm also in pain, because she is my daughter and my child. I gave birth to her, and that's what my mother said to me. My father said he wants praise to God, and this is real, I'm not kidding. God let me bear her pain for her. And then in junior high school, I asked my brother, do you love me? And then he said, yes, I love you like a brother loves his little sister. So this is some of the artworks that I've been doing for my residency or my experimental artworks or my experimental art practices. The nastiness talking about the sexual abuse. Lorazepam is about the medication that I used to get prescribed from my psychiatrist. It's about the anti-anxiety thing. Stop coming to my memories, only God knows, pond and gray skies. Now I want to talk about an art terms that I hold for having an honesty with my art practice itself. The first one is that art's supposed to make things, find things, realize things. Every human experience a different things when they see an artwork or in the museum or gallery itself. So for me, the art itself, like what I said before, as something that I used to get for my personal reflection, for my ongoing process of the maturity itself. The second one is the intimacy. And in the beginning, I also said that I usually talk with the artwork, and I want the artwork talk to me also through the brushstrokes or through the broken lines and every mark makings that I created. The third one, observe on everyday's context, hold on to the sensitivity to the context, materials, and spaces. I feel that observing is really important for me because we know and we aware on our surroundings, and it could make or having an inspiration towards everything. I mean, not only the art itself, but it could be everything. The fourth one, an artist has the power to bring the object into a different context, which the artist itself have their own perspective, and they will show it to the world as their own will. The last one is the one that I love the most because art also surprises the artist. Because as an artist, I never know where my brushstrokes, where my broken lines could lead me to somewhere. For example, if I want these artworks to be this kind of type thing, but then the brushstrokes or the way I move my body, it will lead to somewhere else. And that's when the art itself also surprises the artist. So right now, I want to thank you for a reminder that I get from books, from a lot of resources, from my closest people, and also from my psychologists. And I want to share to you all a reminder that I hold on until now for my act of self-love. The first, I am not what happened to me. The second one, no one is qualified to decide my worth. The third one, we don't have control of our situation sometimes, but we do have control in the attitude towards it. And the last one is that baby steps are okay. We are human. We are not expecting to be like a robot from A to B. It could be A to A1 to A2, and it is really okay. It's just a matter of progression again. And before I end my speech right now, everyone knows Salvador Dali, so I quoted one quote from him, which is, a true artist is not who is inspired, but one who inspired others. I'm Paskalia. Thank you so much. Take care and have a good day.